Dave, can you sort of talk to us about the nature of a collapse like this and what it means for the search and rescue crews? We've heard the phrase or the word pancake as far as the building collapsing in on itself and leaving very little in the way of voids for potential victims or survivors to be accessed in any way. In your level of expertise, what does that mean as far as what we're dealing with and whether search and rescue becomes a recovery operation instead?
Yeah, I mean, you always go in hoping for the best. This type of collapse certainly doesn't lend itself to a lot of open void spaces where victims could survive. Right now, what the technical search guys are doing is methodical search using canines to kind of locate an area of interest, and then using sounding devices and visual devices to see if there's any victims or any void spaces. And so they're literally looking for a needle in a haystack right now. So they're kind of setting up a grid to be able to search every part of the building they can access. You know, the problem right now is the possibility of a secondary collapse. So some of the areas they can't get into, they're going to need to stabilize them with shoring in order to make sure that the rescuers aren't the ones that end up in harm's way.
And Dave, that's something we've been talking about all morning, the search and rescue efforts, while of course keeping our first responder safety in mind. Can you talk a little bit about this specific situation as well? Because as you can see, one part of the building just completely collapsed and then the other part just looks intact. We had reporters from different vantage points and it was a different situation depending on what part of the building some of those people were in. But talk about some of the unique challenges here.
Well, it's always a challenge when there's still part of the structure standing, because there's always a possibility. I mean, fortunately, we don't deal with aftershocks like we've experienced our team, you know, across the globe, post-earthquakes. But there's certainly dangers of the wind, the weather that we've been having lately lends itself, and just the sheer unstable nature of the building. So it's one of those things that they're going to rely on the structural engineers that work with the search and rescue specialists in order to make the decision of you can work in this area, you can't work in this area, and it's just going to be a long, ongoing process to try to clear every part of the building.
As far as we were just taking a live look, and it looks like as though there's no current activity as far as, you know, removing rubble. In a situation like this, an outsider with no experience in this field of search and rescue might be wondering, why aren't they trying to remove rubble? Why aren't they trying to lift things to get to the people who are potentially underneath? Explain to our viewers who may be wondering that the type of timeline and the process that it takes to secure a scene like this before anything can actually be moved.
So as part of collapse search and rescue, there's a step-by-step methodical approach. You know, remove all the surface victims, remove those that are lightly trapped, then you conduct the void search. The last thing you want to do is start removing rubble because that causes shift in rubble, that causes movement. So, you know, quite frankly, gravity has served its purpose and everything is settled. And what we don't want to do is disturb a lot of the area and cause further collapse either in small areas or the existing structure. So while it doesn't look like a lot is happening, I can assure you a lot is happening. It's just a very arduous process to conduct this void search.
And Dave, one more question before we let you go. Can we talk about the initial response? Because this morning, the first thing that we knew, the first confirmed information that we had was that there were more than 80 units from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue alone. And then we saw, you know, trickling in information from other agencies who had responded from Miami Beach to Broward. Just based off what you know now and some of the initial information, what do you make of that in your experience?
Well, I mean, based on the nature of the call, occupied high-rise collapse, the fire department is going to try to send as many first responders as possible in the beginning until you can sort everything out and figure out what do we really need and what don't we need. And so we have a structured assignment of how many units would go. The initial arriving units encountered a lot of the walking wounded, and so they requested a lot of rescues for transport. Fortunately, it turned out that a lot weren't injured to the point where they needed to be transported, but you don't know that in the very beginning. So it's better to send more and then be able to call units back than to be in a situation where you don't have enough help in the very beginning.
Absolutely, just critical to make sure that as many people respond as possible in those first minutes. And as we're learning that latest information, former Miami-Dade Fire Chief Dave Downey, thanks so much for your insight this morning.